character. And so I want to be able to preserve that and bake that out inside of 3ds Max or whatever package I'm using to bake this. And so whenever we decimate it, you want to make sure that you're watching that. So I'm going to go ahead and start out with the default 20% decimation. Let's go ahead and say decimate current. And it's going to take some time to do that. You may want to take a look at the active points that you have on this character. So let's go ahead and decimate this. Try that again. I think it actually finished. That went much faster than I thought it was going to. Okay, so if we hit Shift F, we can see the poly frame, and you can see here that we are getting a lot of this detail still in here. So if it doesn't look any different, if it tricked you like it tricked me, then I think you're okay to go ahead and move forward. Alright, so I'm happy with that. Let's go ahead and move on to the next one. We have the eyes. We don't need to decimate those. It's not that big of a deal. The hand itself, if we hit Shift F, you can see that it's nice and neat, and we want to go ahead and reduce that down as well. So I'm going to go to Z plugin, and we're going to say preprocess current. Give that just a moment to go through that process. And then we'll go ahead and we'll go to decimation master, and we can decimate current at 20. I do want to make sure that I have the detail in the glove itself, so I want to make sure that that is still there. And so we'll say decimate current at 20% and hit Shift F, and you can see that that has given us the detail that we require there, and that gives us a pretty good result. Let's do the same thing for this hand. We'll hit F just to kind of zoom in on that. Pre-process. And then we'll decimate that after it's finished. Okay, so we'll say decimate current at 20. And that's finished. Now we have our hood as well. Let's hit F on it. The hood has a lot of this fine detail in it as well, and we want to make sure that we hold on to that. In this lesson, we're going to learn how to export our high poly mesh over to 3ds Max. Alright, so we're now ready to go ahead and export our high poly character over into 3ds Max. Now at this point we've gone ahead and we've gotten rid of any extra geometry that was not necessarily needed, and we also went ahead and we started decimating the meshes to get them as low as possible while still retaining some of our high resolution detail. So what we want to do is we now want to take all of these, we want to bring them into 3ds Max. So to get started, you could go ahead and take everything and merge it all down. You could do that. I would go ahead and suggest doing that, so that way you can just get everything exported out at the exact same time. So with the hair, this is a low poly hair, but it was created here in ZBrush just to kind of be a good placeholder. I want to go ahead and merge all of these down. So as you merge these down, it's going to bring those all together. Now you might be asking, well, why did we split those apart and then and now we're just merging them back together? Well, I split them apart so that way I could decimate them separately, but now that I'm finished with all that decimating, I can go ahead and start merging them together, making them one solid piece. Now you might be asking, well, what happens if I don't want them to be a solid piece inside of 3ds Max? Well, luckily for us, we have a really great option that we can put in our export tools that will allow us to export these out as groups. And so it won't all come together as a single object. So to set that up, let's go down to Export. And in Export, you're going to see that we have a couple of different options. The first thing, because you decimated the model, you want to make sure that you are exporting everything out as triangles. Okay. The decimation process turns everything into triangles and creates a really nice high poly look, but still keeping it as low as possible on that polygon count. We don't necessarily need to bring our texture in. I don't need to flip any faces. I really don't need to merge any UV coordinates, and I certainly don't need to export any. I do need to export the subgroups, though. I will keep that active. And what that's going to do is it's going to export these out, and it's going to make sure that my coat is part of its own subgroup and things like that. Okay. So now we want to make sure that our scale is set to 1, and I'm just going to leave everything else the way it is. So now to actually export this, let's go up to the top and say export. So we're going to export this out. We can put it in our project files folder. I'm going to go ahead and put it in my 3ds Max files folder. But before I do that, let me go ahead and set up a project file or a project folder for that 3ds Max file. So really quickly, we could actually go into 3ds Max and we can go to Customize and then Configure User Paths. Here you can choose your file folder which you want to put this in. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and we'll do game character, project files, and then inside of that 3ds Max files, and hit OK. Okay. So with that all set up, we'll just simply hit OK, and that'll create some files inside of that 3ds Max files folder. So back in ZBrush, really quickly, let's go to 3ds Max files, and you'll see that we have all these new files. Let's go ahead and put this into our import folder, and I'm going to go ahead and call this female_survivor, and then we're going to export it out as an OBJ. We'll hit save on that, and that will export that out. Give it just a moment. There we go. So that has been exported out. Let's go ahead and go into 3ds Max, and we can import this in. So to import, we'll simply go to File,